Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to The Sober Broker, the show where we talk about recovery, discipline, and faith, rebuilding after life's hard decisions and what it really looks like to live aligned. Not perfect, but honest. Today's conversation is a powerful one because my guest brings a perspective that stretches how we think about sobriety, healing, and conscious living. Joining us is Damkianna, an advisor, event producer, and guide for visionary leaders, founders, and parents who are seeking deeper clarity, spiritual alignment, and embodied presence in their everyday lives. She's the founder of Damkianna.com and Right Productions, where she curates immersive, non-alcoholic ceremonial gatherings and transformational experiences designed to help people reconnect with themselves, with purpose, and with community, without relying on substance to get there. Damkianna's story isn't about glamorizing the fall. It's about walking through seasons of deep recalibration, navigating depression, painful custody battles, misaligned relationships, and the slow recognition that chasing connection through unhealthy patterns was costing her peace. What I really love about her story and her journey is that she didn't wait for rock bottom to choose better. She chose awareness. She chose discipline, she chose faith, nervous system regulation, spiritual grounding, and daily practices that brought her back into alignment. She's here today because she believes in creating space where people can gather sober-minded, whether that's literally sober or simply freedom from numbing. Spaces rooted in clarity and connection and purpose. She's joining us to share how transformation doesn't always start with labels. Sometimes it starts with a quiet decision every morning just to live differently. Damkianna, welcome to The Sober Broker. I'm really grateful that you're here.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful intro. I'm literally tearing up hearing that reflected back in the way you put it. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. So welcome aboard. Obviously, this is a just informal discussion, just to kind of talk about your journey and your life and things that you had to, necessarily transform through and change. And I would like to hear more about your story and why you chose to be on The Sober Broker.
Absolutely. Well, I saw you sharing about this show that you were beginning, and it struck something in me because, as you named, I curate events that are intentionally sober. And so I thought, yeah, I'd love to be a part of this conversation and connect with your community and your network and be able to just talk about the intentional choice to be in spaces and to gather in spaces where we're not seeking something externally to be kind of the social lubricant. And so it's just something I'm really passionate about. So I was excited to just come on here, share, and yeah, that's why I'm here.
So what would you say recovery really is? Is it beyond just substances?
Yeah, so I think everybody's recovery journey and story and what it means to them is different. But for me, you mentioned that in the opening that I wasn't in a place where I hit necessarily rock bottom with substances that then led me to recovery and sobriety. But I will say that I was seeking external things to either numb emotions, distract me, to make me feel better. And so, for me, recovery actually, it looks like wellness. It looks like healing. It looks like connecting more deeply with ourselves. And so for me, my journey of kind of recalibrating, and you also use that word align. Align is a word that I use so regularly every day. And it's something I think about all the time because it's not about knowing, it's not about being perfect. It's not about, okay, I never mess up or I always do this and I never do that. That's very black and white thinking. That's very, it's not the way reality often is. There's often about what is the best choice in this moment. And so I feel that recovery and connecting with our own journey of what wellness and health and vitality looks like really comes from being so connected with the present moment and being able to tune into what's happening with my mind, my body, my spirit, my emotions, and what do I need right now to be in deeper alignment so that I can create in greater harmony in my life and in the world around me.
So, would you agree that the substances are really there? Just kind of, you mentioned the term earlier, social lubricant. I
Yeah.
feel like that falls under so many people's criteria as far as why they even drink. Just because, I mean, for me, for example, like it was deeply ingrained starting in high school, where I was a freshman on varsity soccer in my high school. So automatically I was integrated with, the juniors and seniors who uh, obviously party and, go out and do those kind of things. And at an early age, that's what taught me to start drinking. It's not just there's no scientific backing for it, right? It's
Yeah.
just, what group of people were you hanging out with? What did they do? And then you start doing the things that they were doing. And obviously that goes all the way through college. I mean, I feel like, most people drink not to necessarily numb or anything, but to just have fun and kind of get along. But then at
Yeah,
what point does that get away from you, right? Where
absolutely.
does
Yeah, it's
where does the trauma start coming into play?
yeah, and I think it's muddy waters because it's like when we enter into something and we choose to explore something because we are in that natural phase of curiosity and wanting we always as humans want to feel connected and we want to fit in. And when we really look at the way our culture is designed and I mean, if you really just looked at how much money goes into imprinting society with this is what is cool, this is what is normal. It's weird if you don't do this, actually. I mean, that's really such a big imprinting in all of us. And so we are creatures that are designed to be connected with community. So when going out on the weekend or going out to dinner with your friends or even out to brunch and having mimosas, like everybody's doing it. If I'm not doing that, then also you're not feeling like you're on the same vibe. That's definitely, I'm curious if this has been an experience for you in the past, if you go into a setting where everyone's drinking and you're maybe the only one that's not, and it's kind of this awkward, noticeable thing, and everybody's literally on a different frequency. Have you experienced that?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, that is definitely something that led me to start looking at and realizing, okay, I love nightlife. I love getting dressed up, going out with friends. I love dancing. But I also love deep connection and I love like really deep intentional conversations with people. And I just, I ended up, really, going to like burner parties, which are more intentional. There's less alcohol, but there's more of other types of substances.
Mm.
People are on Molly or acid or smoking tons of weed. So it was still like, okay, I'm getting the social connection. I'm getting the fun. I'm getting to dress up, but there's still all these substances. There's still all this loud music. So the connection isn't really there. And so I just kind of kept going into all these different experiences and thinking, okay, I like this, but I don't like that. And, that is a little bit about what led me to what I'm doing now, which is creating right productions and creating events where people can come and have those experiences, really get down on the dance floor, but also have, tea served in its own section where you can sit and you can have intentional conversations with people. So that's, in seeing that really what we're looking for is connection, but it's also so fun to be surrounded by the arts and music and beauty. So I digress though. I just get excited talking about that.
Good. So let's expand on the right productions. What's the heart behind it, and what kind of transformation are you hoping people walk away with?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, it's ceremonial nightlife. And so, what I recognized and what I'm passionate about, and, we'll probably get into this in different layers of my story of how I arrived here. So, we'll kind of start now, but we'll circle back to give more context. essentially I realized that just throwing a party and removing alcohol is not the answer.
Mm,
Because, like we were talking about, alcohol being a social lubricant, literally changing people's neurochemistry, changing their emotions, making them feel happier, more open. It literally is a social lubricant. And so it makes it easier to connect. It makes it easier to let yourself go on a dance floor. So if you just throw a party and you take away all the substances, and everybody has grown up with this imprinting in their nervous system, in their social structure, you know, there's no buffer. And so a part of my journey has been really having deep spiritual awakenings and really connecting with what I would call like my higher self, my higher spiritual perspective. And in that journey, I also was really asking, first of all, why am I here on this planet? How can I make a measurable positive impact? And then also, I was really asking, what were my ancestors doing to connect to harmony, to build community, to connect to spirituality and divinity outside of religion, like before organized religion was a thing.
mhm,
And so I did a very deep dive into those questions, and I began to study and saw that all of our ancient ancestors, regardless of what culture you are from, actually have deep roots in some very similar practices. And when they gathered in ceremony, and everything was a ceremony to them. And so, what I really saw that meant was when you're planting seeds, you're doing that in prayer. You're doing that in reverence to the life and the energy and the nourishment that those plants are going to bring your community. When you're gathering and you're harvesting, whether it's you're hunting or you're gathering herbs, you also honor the life and the essence and the intelligence of that being, of that plant. And so, our ancestors really lived in a way where they honored every daily moment as connection to divinity, as connection to this essence and this truth that we are connected to something that's bigger than us.
mm.
And so as I began to see that, and I saw literally whether you go back 2,000 years to ancient China or 5,000 years to the Native Americans, there were some consistent themes. And so with that, I then began to just incorporate that perspective into the way I lived my life. And I can go deeper to kind of share about that journey. But what I will say is where it led me is okay, to create an environment where people feel safe, to open up, and to enjoy and to connect in a nightlife setting with no alcohol and no drugs, that's going to require setting the space very intentionally.
Mm.
So I really pulled upon those things that I learned by studying how our ancient ancestors gathered and what I've learned on my spiritual journey to intentionally curate a space that when people walk in, they feel like they're crossing a threshold into this bubble of energy that is just filled with intention. And there's a lot of unique things that I weave into the programming and the curation that help people drop in, feel connected, feel like they don't need that buffer because their nervous system is already telling them, hey, you're safe.
And I'm sure, like, whenever you're forming these events, um, obviously how you market it and how you promote it tells a lot to the people that are attending what really it's about. So when
Yeah.
they're not expecting alcohol, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And for example, the next one I have coming up is in April, and I was so excited to actually partner with a non-alcoholic nightclub here in Asheville called Nightshade.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, and so it's really amazing. There's such a huge movement of, there's private membership clubs in New York. There's, lots of places that are recognizing that high performers, high achievers, entrepreneurs, builders, creatives, like we're seeing the importance of wellness and clarity as we're building in the world. And so there's more and more spaces that are forming to support people who value that, which I really love.
Yeah, that's good. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
What as far as like, you know, your events, do they all have a different kind of flow typically, or what does that usually look like?
Yeah, so the ceremonial nightlife events have a signature flow. And so when I actually moved to Asheville, I got really inspired by the ecstatic dance scene. Have you ever heard of ecstatic dance?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so ecstatic dance is a place where it's like an hour and a half to 2 hours. It's a dance DJ set. So there's, this chunk of music that's going to happen. They open it with an intentional circle. So everyone sits, they set an intention, and then there's no talking on the dance floor. And the intention of the space is, this is a safe space to move your body however you want. And so some people will be doing yoga, some people will be meditating, some people will be doing a ridiculous looking dance, some people will be dancing like super epic, it's just the full range of human expression in a safe space, in a nonverbal space. And the intention is for people to be able to somatically release and move and feel free. And so for me, that was a major catalyst. And it's a sober space. So these ecstatic dances, they happen all over the world. And that is something that I have woven into my events. And so another thing about ecstatic dance is it incorporates the five elements. So fire, earth, water, air, and spirit. And it takes you through this journey. All of the DJ sets, they start really gentle, and then by the end, they're, connecting with that fiery element, and then they bring you back down. So when I bring DJs into this more nightlife setting, so this is where I started pulling all the different things that I loved. So things that I loved about burner parties, things that I loved about ecstatic dance, things that I love about a luxury nightclub. I've basically woven them all together. So when you come to a ceremonial nightlife event, first of all, you're getting emails that are kind of inviting you to, this is the theme of this event. This is what, this is how you can dress to match that theme. These are some of the things and the energies that you can start thinking about and feeling into before you even come into the space. Because something that I've seen is that the way our ancestors gathered, it was always around an intention. And so everyone got to come together. And also, I'm very into quantum physics and very into the intersection of spirituality and science. So I know that when we all come together and we are all attuning to a similar frequency. For example, the one in April, the theme is called Divina. And Divina is a Latin word that represents embodied illumination. And I would say that's such an essence of what I love to connect with, help people connect with in these events is you want to feel really grounded, but really expansive. And I wonder if you've ever experienced, you know, or anyone listening, if you've experienced going to a really transformational party and you had like a great Molly journey or acid and you saw into the spiritual realm and you're like, whoa, but then how do you ground that? Right. And so our ancestors in ceremonial gatherings, in their celebrations as communities, they were tuning into something that was a higher energy. And so, that doesn't mean, it literally just means a similar intention. It doesn't have to mean we're tuning into this god or this,
Right.
ancient ceremony that our ancestors did. It's literally intention.
Yeah.
And so,
Arts.
so yeah, people arrive. I always do an opening ceremony. I'm also a music producer and I do performance art. And so I bring my music into the opening ceremony. And so I love getting to weave together performance art, a DJ dance party, and like I said, there's always a tea lounge. You can go and you can sit and have conversations with people in a little quieter space. And the intention is everyone arrives in the first hour. All go on the journey together, and then there's an intentional closing. So it's not necessarily a party. The classic party is like you pregame with your friends, you go out at 11. That was like, what people do. But this one, it's like get ready with intention, enter the space and be on this journey with everyone and be really, getting to really make deep connections and have a great time. So that's the signature ceremonial nightlife. I also have a new series that I'm launching called Luminaries, and it's actually a dinner salon series. And so it's really designed to bring together high level creators, visionary founders, cultural leaders, and really just setting an intentional dinner space for everyone to be able to say, okay, I know I'm going to walk into this dinner and be surrounded by badasses that are creating with intention in the world. And I'm working with one of my dear friends who has a non alcoholic elixir company, and she travels all over the world gathering herbs and roots and flowers and cultivating relationships with different cultures and different lands. And then she does these really old school distillation processes and makes these elixirs. So we're doing special elixir pairings with each course. It's a non-alcoholic, intentional dinner salon, and it's going to be at golden hour at the Radical here in Asheville.
Cool. What's the
Yep.
article?
The Radical is a really beautiful hotel in the River Arts District here in town. And so, yeah, I live in Asheville as well. So I would travel to other bigger cities and have the experience of, okay, I go to South by Southwest in Austin and I go to New York, and there's these events that I can go to, and I know I'm going to be surrounded by big thinkers and big builders, and not just big dreamers, but people who are making shit happen. And I really wanted to create some upscale, grounding, nourishing environments for those who are doing that here in Asheville. And it'll eventually, grow into other cities. But for right now, I'm loving up on the Asheville community in that way.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
How many are your people that are attending these events? Are they just from here locally in Western North Carolina, or are they? I mean, are you pumping this out to Charlotte area and Tennessee? What does that look like?
Yeah, the long-term vision is global. And right now, I'm really cultivating more events here locally. I am going to do a collaboration at South by Southwest in Austin next month in March. But, it's really right now about building the team and building the connections and building the community, and then branching out and doing other events in larger cities, bringing in bigger artists, bigger DJs. That's definitely a big goal of mine, is to really work with those who are in, highly visible scenarios, actors, big DJs, big artists who are very verbal about being sober. And so I'd love to kind of bring this ceremonial approach into merging with their worlds and getting to do this on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now, the next couple things are going to be in Asheville
Okay.
and Austin.
You mentioned frequency earlier and just how it's not necessarily identifying, like tuning into a god or anything of that light. It's more about the intention of the moment and the heart space that you're entering. And when someone is living in constant stress or survival mode, what does that shape, or how does that shape the way that their body responds to everyday life?
That's such a good question.
Frequency.
Yeah, that's such a great question, because those things are so intricately tied together, our frequency and living in survival mode. And so, what I would say to that is, looking at our frequency, it seems like a very woo kind of term, very like spiritual. What does that even mean? High vibes, low vibes, but it's actually very scientific. And so if you think about just the formation of our bodies and our cells, and then zoom down into our atoms, and our atoms are really just oscillating energy. And so as our atoms are vibrating, the speed at which they vibrate, how they vibrate, is actually what changes them into different form and shape. And so as our cells are being formed by the vibration of those atoms, that energy is vibrating all around us. And so you've probably heard of an aura. And an aura is also another very kind of woo spiritual term, but its scientific counterpart would be the electromagnetic field. And so we are we're these conduits of energy, really. This is something that I teach in my offerings with my clients, with my coaching, advising one-on-one work, but I also have some group programs. And I really create space for us to reconnect with the fact that our body is literally a technology. And so we actually get to change the dial of what our frequency is. And that's a big part of, you know, kind of how you mentioned, I really came to a time in my life where I was like, you know what? This world fucking sucks. There's just wars and trauma. And like, no matter how beautiful and peaceful it is right now here in this moment, all of this terrible shit is going on in the world. Like, how am I supposed to process that and feel happy about my life if there's just all this endless pain and suffering? And so at that time when I was really observing that and feeling the dissonance of that, I never would have admitted, but I was definitely depressed. Like looking back, I can be like, okay, girl, you were depressed. So I know I'm kind of getting off on a tangent here, but
You're okay.
yeah, I think that moment where I really looked at that and I thought, okay, I don't really want to live on this planet. I don't really want to be alive in this time. I think this just kind of sucks. And I, was studying spirituality at that time, and I kind of was getting into the existential, like, well, energy, can never be destroyed. So, like, if I just decided that I didn't want to live anymore, there really wouldn't be anything bad about that. I could just float off into the ether and, like, do something else. But I am a mother. And at the time, my son was about 2, 3 years old. And so I remember kind of like having all these thoughts and being like looking over at my son and thinking, if I don't know why I'm here, I cannot lead my son in him learning why he is here.
Mm.
And so that then began me on this journey to really I just started meditating, and I just started asking those questions of like, why am I here? What's my purpose? What were my ancestors doing to connect before dogma and religion? I grew up really Christian. My dad's still a pastor in Texas to this day. And that just never really sat fully with me. My soul didn't resonate with that practice of Christianity. And so, here I was, like, I was raised really Christian. I'm living in America. I don't feel connected to what my ancestors were doing. So all of that is dissonance. So when we get back into talking about frequency, I was feeling very dissonant with the world, feeling very disconnected, feeling very alone, and feeling like I don't really have the answers. And so I'm really grateful to a dear, dear beloved and friend in my life who we've just journeyed and grown together over the years. And he was the one who said, just start meditating. I was like, okay, I'm going to start meditating. So I go and I sit on a hillside, and very I was kind of being very sassy about this. I was like, universe, I am not getting up until you tell me why I'm here on this planet. And so I just sat there. And then this is kind of where my spiritual eyes really opened. These light beings appeared to me, and it was just these two beings, totally made of light. And I was just like, okay, what are your names? And they said, these are our names. And we're here to help you remember where you came from and why you're here. And so for the next 6 months, I would meditate in the morning briefly, meditate in the evening, and I went through what I really describe as an initiation. In different spiritual lineages, you have a spiritual teacher. They take you through initiations that are designed to help you step by step wake up and remember how to connect to more of your senses, how to connect to your higher spiritual sight and intuition. And the important part about having a guide for this is that, as I was mentioning before, we often can have really profound spiritual expansive experiences. A near death experience is a really profound opener for people.
Absolutely. That's what's
And
sobriety.
really? Wow. So it's like you see into another realm. And I'd love to hear you share a little bit about what that sparked for you, and then I could kind of pick back up, but I'd love to hear.
Yeah, I mean, mine was just coming through very similar to what you mentioned. I never had like a knockdown, drag out fight with alcohol or drugs, but mine was more of a struggle with internally finding purpose, seeking, the light in the world. And then whenever I tried to take my life, I mean, first off, I pulled like my car into oncoming traffic and the other car like
Mm,
swerved out from being able to hit me. So I got really
mm,
scared when I did it, and I, pulled back into my lane and all that, pulled over, started crying, and um, it's a very eye-opening experience because you realize, you do have a purpose in a very short
mm,
stint. You realize
mm,
like this is not what life is supposed to be. These are not views that we're supposed to maintain, and the life that I've been choosing to live is no longer serving me. And at that
mhm,
point, I really made a decision to be able to change. It wasn't immediate as far as not consuming any more drugs and alcohol, but within the next couple months, I had quit.
that's super powerful.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that when your eyes are open to something, when we're able to expand our perspective beyond just our personal pain, and kind of, I feel like we can get stuck into the loop of feeling very compressed, feeling very separate, just feeling unhappy. It's like when we're in that state, when we're attuned to that frequency of feeling dissonant, feeling just alone, when we're in that state, we forget how truly connected we are to something bigger. And just on a scientific level, if you're really just looking at energy, the distance between me and my camera for this computer, or the distance between me and you, we're in different homes in different parts of the city. There's so much energy that is between us that actually we're technically always connected. So if you look at just everything through energy, then and also just seeing through the eyes of nature, we learn from that. Nature has been such a teacher for me to recognize that, if you learn about mycelium, mycelium is like the body of mushrooms. So you see the mushrooms coming up in the forest, but underneath in the ground, in the soil, there's this web of interconnectedness. And mycelium is connected all around the world and can communicate almost like
Thanks.
the internet, or like, yeah, brain synapses exactly. And so you start looking at all these different layers and levels of nature and the interconnectedness. And then you recognize, okay, I'm a part of that. I'm not separate from that. And also that is what our ancient ancestors practiced, was that connection to nature and also the connection to the cosmos and something even bigger than just the story of our lives here on this earth. And so, yeah, when we're talking about frequency, we really have the ability to, like I said, kind of change that dial and wake up one day and say, damn, I've just been tuned into this frequency. And you know what? I'm fucking done with that. Like, it's not working for me.
Right.
And I would imagine, people listening, I would say, when was that moment for you? And it can happen in little moments. It can happen with, I keep eating this kind of food and I know I have a reaction to it, but I still keep eating it because it's delicious. And it's that moment to say, okay, I can actually shift this. But it's also about learning how to do that, because overcoming the impulses and the habits and the reason we even reach out for those things in the first place, substances, distractions, we've got to replace that with something else. So that's a journey, I think, for everyone to find what tools work for me to be able to remind myself and get back into my alignment so that I can change that knob and tune into a different frequency.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So if someone's listening and they find themselves often, maybe waking up in a negative state because they don't necessarily want to get out of bed, like how do you shift that perspective to where, you're not in lack or fear, but rather in abundance and gratitude?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as cliche as it sounds, really making a decision to incorporate gratitude is one of the biggest disruptors of that pattern.
Mhm.
And so I noticed for many years, I would wake up and immediately I would think, oh, I want to go back to bed. And then I would immediately think about all the pressures and all the to-do lists and, the person I didn't respond to yesterday. And just like I would feel all this pressure. And that is an active decision. We don't realize it because it's just happening.
Right.
But I began to disrupt that by really, as soon as I wake up, here's what I do now. I literally force all of those thoughts away. I'm just like, those swipe, they go over here. And what I choose to do first is I just, even before I sit up, I'm just like in bed, eyes closed, my alarm has gone off. And I just say, I'm so grateful to be alive today. And honestly, saying it, even if it doesn't feel true, still has an effect. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and getting ourselves out of those negative patterns, doing things even when it's like, well, I don't really feel grateful, but I'm going to say it. Now, you can't just fake it till you make it necessarily. That's not actually going to bring lasting change, but it's going to start disrupting your mental patterns so that you can build new ones. And so the other thing that I say that has been pivotal for me is I say, after I like tune into gratitude, and then presence is one of the most powerful ways to create these shifts. And what I will say is it can be really hard to want to be present in our bodies when we're feeling so much emotions, discomfort, whatever we're holding that's causing us to run
Mm.
to substances, to distractions. So this is where it comes into like, you can't just fake it till you make it. You can't just be like, I'm really grateful and today's going to be better. Like, that's a part of it. So what I will say is, I wake up, I say, I'm so grateful to be alive. I tune into my whole body. I'm like, I'm going to feel every cell in my body right now. And then what I say is, I breathe the fullness of my spirit into every cell of my body. For me, it became a conscious decision to say, I'm going to feel and connect with myself fully, and I'm going to make space for my spirit. Because also, what I will say is the reason that we seek external substances, external distractions, is because at some point in our lives, we come into this life, these perfect, harmonious little spirits and these little bodies, and then we have these life experiences that disrupt us from that harmonious spiritual state
Mm.
of our true essence. Our true essence is harmony. The true essence of nature is harmony.
Yeah.
Like nature is always seeking to move in a way and organize and orient in a way that is the most effective and streamlined and harmonious. So we are part of nature. We're operating in that natural law.
Sure.
So just remember when you're reformatting and recalibrating and it feels hard, that is another big thing that I rely on and work with my clients on is opening back up, reconnecting to this state of harmony that is actually around me and supporting me. So, yeah, that's every morning. If you wake up and you tap into gratitude, if you breathe and just, there's also practices I use to connect more with the body in that moment. And then, yeah, I breathe the fullness of my spirit into every cell of my body.
Yeah.
Because if each one of us was able to connect with our ancient, timeless spirit, and if we felt like there's full space for the power and the intelligence and the wisdom of my spirit, this world would be a completely different place.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Do you, I feel like because of, you know, like from an early age, right? As soon as you start going to school, you start kind of getting programmed to work during the day, and then you have the evenings to be able to spend time with yourself.
Mm.
Do you feel like because of that programming, people don't really actually understand how overstimulated they are to be able to reach that level of frequency, to be able to find peace and homeostasis?
Yeah, 100%. And, I think whether you're looking through a spiritual lens or you're looking through a biohacker lens, your morning practice is pivotal because we're going from that state of rest and then we're starting our day. How are you starting your day? Are you starting it rushing to solve things? Are you starting it feeling already behind and overwhelmed and you haven't even processed the emotions of yesterday?
Mm.
So it's pivotal to have a really intentional morning practice. Now, I'm a mom and I am not a morning person. So I have just taken the practices that work, that are very effective, that are very quick. 5 or 10 minutes is all I need to have my touch point every morning, to do just some simple breathing practices that tell my nervous system, hey, you're safe. You're regulated. We're not just going to rush into the day and look at Instagram and emails and texts. I'm going to take 5 minutes to do this very simple breathing practice to literally program and set my brain and my nervous system up for success. Because, like you said, you know, the world out there is very overstimulating and there's a lot to manage. And so I do that. And then once I really nourish my nervous system in that way, then I say my affirmations. And so I create new affirmations every month or so. And I really take, I kind of journal and I say, this is what's not working in my life. And then I shift that into something positive. And that's just been such a profound way to really look back at my affirmations 6 months ago and then see how much I've embodied those. Because it's not about achieving an external goal and convincing my brain that, I'm going to make this much money. That's my affirmation. It's like, I'm really focusing on how I'm going to shift my energetic state so that I can take aligned action amidst the chaos of the world to reach those goals and to build those dreams and those visions.
I love that. Do you do so I have a nighttime routine and a morning routine where at night I have this organite coaster, and
Mm,
I don't always do a whole new note, but I try to write a note to myself for the next day.
nice.
And I set a bottle of water on, like, I put the coaster down and then the note and then a bottle of water. I try to
Yes.
do like glass or something like that. Um, they say it transfers better.
I love this. Yes.
And then I wake up and drink the bottle of water and read the note, and knowing that like I just ingested, this message to myself, this note to myself. And sometimes it's a Bible verse, sometimes it's a personal message to me, sometimes it's a reminder of what tomorrow is. And in the mornings, when I wake up and do that, then I usually just honestly I just kind of wipe my hands over my face, like kind of like a cleansing, like it's a new day.
Yeah.
I grab my shoulders and give myself a little hug, and then I usually like, just kind of like I don't know. I just have started
Yeah.
doing it, but like I just kind of like brush off, my chest all the way down, and um, I don't know. It just kind of helps me wake up and stretch and kind of get the blood flowing and remind myself that like I'm physically here. Like I have a passage to be able to perform today, and this
Yeah.
is how we get started.
Absolutely. That is so powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I love the water piece because there's incredible research about the way that water holds memories and the way that it holds words. So I'm sure you've geeked out on that.
And frequency too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what words really are. Words are just frequencies.
Mhm.
And so when you're writing something down and you're doing that with intention, it literally changes the format and the molecular structure of that water. And so we also know that we are, what, 98% water, some crazy percentage.
Mhm.
And so, in the same way, when we start using affirmations and we start shifting our frequency, it's literally rippling through our cells and the water that is within us. And so I love that you have that as your ritual. That's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife's mom actually got me that coaster, and at first I was like, "What is this?" And then I looked
Ah,
into it, and then, you know how, like, algorithms work, like, for some reason, as soon as you start thinking about something, you start seeing the ads for it and whatnot.
yes.
Um, the phones are reading our minds, but
It's wild. It's
Well,
wild.
it is wild, but I started seeing all these other things, and then I would get on TikTok, and people would be like, "Oh, I got this organic coaster." I'm like, "Hey, I just got that." And
Nice.
then I started watching more about it, and exactly what you said, just about that, how the water will take on its form, and
Mhm.
that intention for what you are trying to do for that day. Um, and so, yeah, it's an important part for my day, and um, during the school days, it's a little bit harder for me to have like the full morning routine just because as soon as I'm up, like, getting the kids ready, getting
Yes.
into school, and then I, really have that time. I do the water thing beforehand, but then I always try to go to the gym after I drop the kids off at school
Amazing.
when I have more
Yeah,
things
that's
like
that's
this.
important. That's such a I mean, gym time is such important focus and clearing and, calibrating your energy and your frequency as well.
Yeah, 100%. And just again, like allowing your body to serve that purpose that you woke up with in a
Yeah,
different way, but it's maintenance work.
absolutely. So, I'm very curious, what is your purpose? What have you connected with that kind of, you know, that you wake up with every day that keeps you motivated?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so I've been in real estate for it'll be 10 years in July. And quite honestly, I've had this up and down roller coaster between being highly successful in real estate and then being literally living out of my car. And so over the time frame of just going through these waves of success and really bottom of the barrel, you know, frequency and feelings about myself, I realized like life is tremendously short, and my purpose is to one, teach my kids to take full advantage of the time here on earth and help guide them in that direction, but also doing this where I really have, I mean, I was terrified to start this podcast
Mm.
just because I don't necessarily like being on camera. I don't necessarily, like being as vulnerable as I need to be at times. But in this case, it's not just me I'm being vulnerable for. It's everyone who's listening. It's really putting myself in the back seat and knowing that as long as I am moving forward with good intentions about reaching people, about telling stories, about being honest and vulnerable, then I think it gives permission for other people to do the same. And I think that is a huge part of my purpose here on earth is to be vulnerable because a lot of guys aren't. A lot of men are taught through how they're treated to not disclose their feelings, to not talk about, you know, their past, to not, tune in too far into what the bad stuff that they've done in the past or what's made them who they are. And so this is again a way for me to help break the stigma, not just for men, but for anyone who's listening who can assimilate with what, we talk about here.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love it.
Um, when I've written some questions here while you're talking,
Yeah.
what practices, I know you talked about like your morning and, um, well, I guess you haven't really talked about a nighttime routine, but your morning routine kind of helps you recalibrate. Um, but out of your experience, you know, there's no obviously blanket fix for anyone, right? It's
Mhm.
really how you determine what is best for you and you move forward with something that works. How can other people determine what works for them as far as like the morning routine and just being able to create that space, whether it be 5, 15, or 30 minutes in the morning
Mhm.
to be able to just recalibrate their body and get themselves prepared for the day?
Yeah. Well, I think a high level approach would be to really ask yourself, what can I do to connect with my body connect with my spirit, and to focus my mind. And so if you pick one thing for each one of those, then that's a golden way to start. And there are countless ways that people can do that. So, you know, I really love to use visualization and meditation. It's just the fastest way to really tap in directly to the nervous system and to really create very impactful change because our brains don't know the difference between something we're imagining and something that is really happening. And there's a lot of data on that.
And
So,
so cool.
yeah, and I first learned about that. My first profession was as an equestrian trainer. So I trained horses and I had a really amazing mentor who, she had her master's in sports psychology, kinesiology. She was interviewing Olympians about their practices and their techniques. And so she taught me about visualization. And so that's something I've carried with me all through, my adult life journey and to really see how impactful that is and to understand the science behind how our brains really can't tell the difference. And so, and if you think about it, as kids, that's one of our most powerful sources of inspiration is our imagination. And that is also something that we get so disconnected from. Yeah, in your morning practice, if you can find something that helps your body feel safe and relaxed, kind of like you were describing that, like hugging yourself, kind of brushing your body off. That's actually, that reminded me of some chi practices. So ancient Asian, Chinese, like all Asian cultures, they view the human body as an energy channels. And so their medicine is also designed to work with the energy channels of the body. So when you're brushing your body off like that, you are literally supporting your body and moving any stagnant energy. So that's the way that you found to connect with your body. And so, yeah, I would say encourage people to just write down, mind, body, spirit, and then find, maybe 3 practices for each one that you can rotate and play with. And, I'm really about the 5 or 10-minute morning practice before I go downstairs to make breakfast and get to school on time. I work that little 5 or 10 minutes in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's why I made mine so quick like that. Is just
Yeah,
kind of get up, obviously service me first, and then be able to help my kids get ready and get up out of bed and kind of start that whole process.
absolutely. And it can be really quick, and it's about the consistency that builds up. Because also when we start our day off with just that intentional 5 or 10 minutes or even, 1 or 2 minutes, it's a resource that we can return to throughout the day. So you read that email and it pisses you off and now you're feeling really stressed and you already started the day setting your frequency and your nervous system and your mind, body, spirit into alignment, and so you can more easily return to that. So it's just really about that consistency.
Amen. Yeah, for sure. I think anything in life that you do, as long as you do it consistently, um, well, maybe not anything, but with good intentions, you're really going to have a good positive outcome from it.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else, Damkiana, that you wanted to mention that we have not talked about here?
I think I'd love to share that, we talked a bit about Right Productions and the events and loved getting to share that. And the other core work that I do is I really guide visionary leaders, creators, entrepreneurs, parents, like you shared in the beginning, to really connect with that higher spiritual guidance in a grounded way. And so I do have a new group initiation that's a 6-month program. It's called Divine Creator Frequency. And so that is going to be starting in March. So I would just want to invite your network to come find me on Instagram. I'm very active on there, and check out my
And
website. My handle is the Damkianna, So THE and then my name. And yeah, you can find everything on my website too, but I'd just love to invite those who are feeling inspired by this integration with spirituality and also embodiment and that leadership that I'd love to connect further. So find me on my website or my Instagram.
All right.
Yeah,
Well, Damkianna, thank you so much for being honest and bringing such depth and clarity into this conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us your story and just remind us that transformation isn't always about a dramatic collapse, but it can start with awareness and with choosing alignment and with learning how to regulate our bodies and quiet the noise and come back to who we were really created to be. Your work through your practice and through right productions and your events and just creating, these spaces for people to bring their presence and connection and purpose is a really powerful invitation for people who are tired of just numbing or running from the pain, but who are really trying to feel again and just be, human. So, to anyone listening, to everyone listening, if this episode stirred something in you, if you've been questioning about your habits, your pace, relationships, or just the way you cope, let that curiosity be your starting point. Healing doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it just begins with an honest decision each day. And Damkianna, we're grateful for you. We're so happy that you joined us today. And if anyone wants to reach out to Damkianna directly, you can find her on the damkianna.com or through her Instagram handle, which is the exact same, the Damkianna. And we're we're moving forward out of this podcast. And if you guys want to tune in, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, and Instagram. And this is just at thesoberbroker.com or the Sober Broker for all of my handles. So, Damkianna, thank you again for joining us. Thank you for being a part of the Sober Broker, and we hope to talk to you soon.
absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right.